No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton. This is a special edition of Outspoken Live. And all week, as you know, we have been counting down the 50 worst of 2024 with my favourite members of the Outspoken family. Today, we reach the pinnacle. I will be revealing the worst of the past 12 months. And goodness me, there has been a lot to choose from. Today, with that final countdown, two superstar panelists who have had big years of their own. Bernie Spofforth of the brilliant If This Is True YouTube channel and conservative commentator, medical expert, you see here on all of your favourite television shows. Dr. Renee Hoenderkamp is in the house as well. Please do click to subscribe to our brand new independent news source. Turn on the notification bell, then you'll be alerted to our brand new live shows, Uncancelled interviews, and special royal episodes. The best way to support Outspoken, though, is by signing up at www.outspoken.live. The address is on the screen. That takes you to my Substack page. Substack is an incredible free speech platform. It allows me to have a direct conversation with you. You also get access to my columns, exclusive chats, plus in the new year, so literally I think about 10 days time, the Uncancelled aftershow returns Monday to Friday, which gives you 30 minutes of extra content on weekdays from just £5 a month plus VAT if you're in the UK. But most importantly, it allows me to continue making this independent daily news show. But now, let's go. Oh, Dr. Renee, Bernie Spofforth, two of my favourites. Thank you for getting out of your New Year slumber and being here. And Bernie, goodness me, it must be a little bit traumatic what I'm putting you through. Talking about 2024, because of course you had a horrific one, which we will come to very shortly. But I think a great 2025 beckons, especially with If This Is True going great guns.
Well, let's hope so, because it couldn't be any worse than it was last year, could it? No, literally no worse than it was last year.
Well, that's how I felt about 2023. And so I promise you, it will only get better. But Dr. Renee, you've had a brilliant past 12 months.
Yeah, it's been good for me in terms of career-wise. Obviously, lots of TV, lots on GB now, and a permanent member of Saturday 5 Live. But also, I've been able to come out of that doctor place in COVID, which was horrific for so long. And now it seems that we really can, most of us can leave it behind us and just look forward to this 2025. And it can only get better. I think for all of us on the panel, it can only get better, surely.
Yes, well, indeed. And also, when you look at how things have changed, certainly in terms of the American health establishment with the appointment of RFK Jr., Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, you were one of those voices in the UK that was right on all of those big issues. So, yeah, things can only get better, maybe. 2024 was pretty crap. So yes, let's hope so. But actually, it gives me a huge amount of content for the top 10 worst of 2024. Let's kick off the countdown. I just have to give you this guy's name. You're going to understand what I mean. James O'Brien. In March, he won my first ever 50 worst people in the UK list. I will be updating that in just a few weeks' time. I'm very excited. But this year, he makes number 10 on the worst of 2024 for the increasingly unhinged way that he treats the callers on his show. These are loyal people who listen to him. Dr. Renee, let's not go there, but he's looking pretty unhealthy, if you know what I mean, as well.
He looks quite angry all of the time, doesn't
Very
he?
angry, very red. He's very red.
Yeah.
But I'm going to show you one of the best moments where he was owned over these farmers' protests by a caller, and it was beautiful to watch.
You're shouting at me again. Panels, we've had the offers for wind farms.
Well, there you go. Then what are you complaining about?
Because we don't want to concrete over the land. I know you're a townie. I know you're happy living in your liberal elite world of London. But for us, the countryside is the countryside. It's where our food comes from, James.
So you've been offered.
You seem to have forgotten that.
You
seem to have forgotten that, haven't you, James?
Charlie, you
can't
don't
accept it.
Okay, mate. I'm going to have a
I'm
little.
not your mate. I hate you. I think you're an idiot.
Okay.
I think you're a lefty, liberal, woke idiot.
Okay, Charlie.
Let's tarmac the AOMBs.
Charlie.
Let's tarmac them. Yeah, get some solar farms on there. Yeah, why not, James?
I think
hey, James, you like immigrants.
Charlie.
You probably want to see some homes there as well, don't you?
Well,
London,
down with
liberal
homes.
elite.
Down
When was
with.
the last time you went to a farm?
I grew up on a working farm. I probably should have mentioned that sooner. I grew up just outside Kidderminster in Worcestershire. The farmers are all around Chaddersley, Corbett, and that area.
So what? Your dad was a farmer?
Absolutely. No, I've explained several. Do you listen to this programme?
So when you? No, I don't.
Well, how can you have such strong?
I think you're an idiot.
How can you have such strong views about me then?
Because the few times I have listened to you, I heard how you speak to people. You talk over them and cut them off, like you've done to me.
Down with that sort of thing, Charlie?
You are down with that, I know. That's what you love.
I mean down with talking over people and shouting at them.
Oh, I'll shout at you. I'll give you everything that you try and give me.
I've tried to give you a fair hearing.
You haven't. You haven't at all.
Okay.
I pointed the facts to you and you won't accept it.
Okay.
You know nothing, James. Stick in your London liberal lefty wokeism. You know nothing about farming.
Know from your time on Talk that James was giving that little message to the producers saying, turn this guy down, he's owning me, I've got to get him off, which is why his voice faded out at the end there, because James O'Brien actually can't handle it when someone brings him the truth.
No, but they never can they? Because they're so righteous in their lefty, wokey, liberal ideas that they really do believe that anyone who doesn't agree with them is stupid. Really, that's what it is.
Yeah. I mean, Bernie, I believe that James O'Brien is a really nefarious force for this country. Do you know, there was an investigation this year showing that he's had something like 900 complaints to the government since as the off-communist, and they have chosen not to investigate him once. And that just shows you, doesn't it, the complete two-tier treatment compared to how the off-communists overly regulate GB News, for example.
Absolutely, because he's on their side. He's parroting their narrative. He did exactly the same thing during Brexit. And for me, I don't think James O'Brien has any intellectual neutrality. He has no emotional intelligence because he's unable to see any kind of opposing view at all or listen to anybody else's arguments. I mean, I phoned up his show during Brexit because I hadn't told anyone how I voted, and I could answer both sides of that argument. And he wouldn't take my call and then just block me. Really? Ridiculous. It really is ridiculous. But because he's on the side of the narrative, he thinks he's, anti-establishment and he's all cool and down with it. But he just parrots everything the government wants him to say. Everything. And don't forget, this is the guy who on air suggested it would be absolutely fine if somebody wanted to go out and shoot Trump.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. And there was, again, no investigation.
No.
But I think you've just summarised, Bernie, what these people do. They accuse us all the time of trying to shut down their voice. I've been blocked by James O'Brien for probably about 3 years now after some COVID conversations that we tried to have online. He's blocked you, he's blocked me. I don't know about you, Dan, but this is what they do.
Oh, yes, I've been blocked a long time.
So we're in the James O'Brien has blocked us club for a reason, because they don't want to listen. He doesn't want to listen.
Well, because he can't actually. I'm sure there are some people that you might not agree with, but you get on with, right? You can have a conversation with them. I actually don't believe that James O'Brien has enough information about the other side of the argument to allow himself to get into a debate with anybody, because he doesn't want someone else to be right. And that is just incredibly stupid, because you don't learn anything if you close your ears to everybody else's discussion.
But that's also incredibly common in this debate, isn't it? So the people who really have the facts, and that's why he blocked me, because I had the facts about COVID and he couldn't argue with them. It's incredibly common, but also incredibly stupid, as you rightly say, because eventually the facts and the truth will win out.
But that's why these people, and, James O'Brien is part of that activist club, right? So because they can't fight with you on the facts because you're right, what they do is they wait for the slightest little mistake and then destroy you. Just do whatever they can to destroy you for a mistake. I don't think James O'Brien ever putting his hand up and saying, I was actually wrong about believing that guy who said there was a paedophile ring.
Carl
But
Beach.
he never said
Yeah,
that.
exactly. Carl Beach, one of Britain's biggest fantasists who turned out to be a paedophile. James O'Brien platformed his false
Absolutely.
story for years.
Absolutely. And so he made a mistake. Okay, it was a genuine mistake, but no one else is allowed to.
No, indeed.
No.
Although I would claim, Dr. Renee, though, his genuine mistake was clouded by political ideology, because actually he wants to destroy his enemies. He wants to silence his enemies. He doesn't believe people like us should even have a platform. It's chilling. This guy is actually authoritarian in his approach.
Absolutely.
They're authoritarian, but there's also an intellectual snobbery.
Oh, yeah.
There's an intellectual snobbery that we can't possibly think this way and be intelligent. Those two things don't go together in their mind.
Absolutely true. Absolutely true. And I've spoken to many people about that. In fact, it isn't James O'Brien, but I know that they are perhaps good friends. If you don't have a degree, you shouldn't be allowed to vote. What?
Yes.
So if you've got a degree in English, you shouldn't be allowed to vote because you're more intellectually superior than the bloke who's worked on the docks for 40 years and knows everything about that subject. He can't have a voice, but you can because you've got a degree in English. Well done.
Well, of course, because James O'Brien's fundamental argument, the same as Alistair Campbell, is that if you were stupid enough to vote for Brexit, you didn't understand what you did. And you just didn't get it. It's not that you believed in it. You were too stupid.
And it will be exactly the same on the net zero argument as it was on the COVID argument. They will just close everything down.
Indeed. Indeed.
I'm quite happy to be in this stupid club, though, aren't you?
Oh, big time. Big time. And I just keep saying, oh, just please go off to this sly thing that they talk about. Just go. That's absolutely fine. I don't care if you don't want to actually have a debate. You just go to a place that none of us are going to be and you'll live happily ever after.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's continue our countdown, though. At number 9, a really chilling one. Pensioner carers and Tory housewives sent to jail for posts on social media. You know, over the course of this year, I've tracked many of these cases. This was an explanation of the shocking story of Lucy Connolly. So, Lucy's 12-year-old daughter, without her mother for up to 2.5 years. And I say anyone who thinks that Lucy should be locked up when violent men who attack women at petrol stations for not dressing conservatively enough, or when people like Hugh Edwards receive no custodial sentence for making child pornography, well, I think if they still think Lucy Connolly should be behind bars for such an extraordinary long sentence, then they have truly lost the plot. But the sick and twisted authorities are having to come for women like Lucy, one of just 400 so-called rioters or social media criminals who are being locked up. And they're doing it because their far-right bogeyman is nothing more than a figment of the imagination. And I've really followed Lucy's case over the past few months, Dr. Renee. Yeah. She's spending Christmas in jail. Her 12-year-old daughter, for whom she was the main caregiver of, is unable to be looked after by her mother. Her husband, Raymond Connolly, who gave his first interview on this show, he is a Tory councillor and he is being subjected to the most awful sort of lawfare and witch hunt by the establishment left because they say he was wrong to say that his wife isn't racist. And I just look at that picture of Raymond, by the way, with their little boy. And we have to remember that Lucy Connolly and Raymond lost their little boy at 18 months old because of NHS failure. That is proven, Dr. Renee. That came out in the inquest. They received an apology. And that is such an obvious reason why the brutal stabbing of three young girls at a Taylor Swift dance class resulted in Lucy Connolly having a bit of an emotional breakdown where she posted an inappropriate tweet?
Look, Dan, you're absolutely right. Of course, it gives a reason to her actions, but I would actually argue that there's no evidence. We've done decades of research that tweets or written words actually make somebody pick up a box of matches and go out and do what Lucy suggested. I'm not defending her actions, but what we should be doing in this country is putting people in jail that we are scared of, not people with whom their views we find distasteful, which is what's going on here. And the problem that we have is we see week after week after week, as you rightly pointed out, paedophiles who've got pictures of newborn and very young babies being raped on their computers, not going to prison because, of course, they were only photos. And we've got Lucy, a mother, being separated from her child. And we know that the trauma that a child will face and have to deal with in life and possibly not get through life as well as she should by being separated from her mother is so immense that I think as a society we should think very, very hard before we ever separate a mother from her children. And she should only go to prison if she's physically, and I mean physically, carried out a crime that has damaged or hurt people. So this is where we're going wrong. But this wasn't about what Lucy said, was it? This was a message to everybody else. Don't you dare disagree with us. Don't you dare express your deep held concerns, which we have. I have, you have, and normal people have. We are worried about the importation of men of, 20 years old who have a very different view about what women are for into our communities, as has now been demonstrated. And Lucy is just the victim of the government trying to control people.
Absolutely. And Bernie, this one must feel pretty raw for you, given you also faced a police investigation for sending a tweet. And I mean, I hate to say it, Bernie, but you could have been like Lucy Connolly if the authoritarian police forces had got their way.
Yes, I could have. And I saw that in the interview you did with her husband. And a part of it made me cry. And it was because he said that she had been given, during your sentence, you're allowed 1 day off. And she had chosen to have a day off over Christmas. And they told her she couldn't because of the media interest. Mm-hmm. But that's outrageous. And it's so unfair. It's desperate for her daughter, her husband, and herself. Because exactly as Renee says, you might find her views distasteful, but it doesn't mean her views were wrong. Thousands, millions of people in this country are ordinary and have the same views. But you see, the government has to suppress information to keep the public disarmed, right? This isn't a physical disarmament, it's a verbal disarmament. And if we remove the information, they think they can remove the speech, and it won't work. It won't work for long, but it'll work for now, because if someone like Lucy Connolly can go to prison, then it means people who want to say things about the Cresta Court Migrant Hotel, for instance, they might have some very strong views, but they're too frightened to say them because they could end up in prison like Lucy. And it's appalling. It's appalling. And I don't think it's going to change. I think it will get worse.
Yeah, no, indeed. And, to Renee's point, she is spending her Christmas locked up alongside murderers. That is the reality for writing something on X. And actually, a very similar case at number 8 on our countdown on the worst of 2024. Star Daily Telegraph journalist, I think the best newspaper columnist in the country, a great friend of all of ours, Alison Pearson, investigated by police for, you guessed it, a post on X. Watch.
But as you say, Dan, it's not that funny, because I have to say it was horrible. It's my country, and we were there on Remembrance Day when, of course, we commemorate all those amazingly brave, mainly young men who gave their lives for this country so it could be free and not under the jackboot of tyranny. And here we are with two coppers the same age as many of those guys who gave their lives coming to my door, and in what I took as being tyrannical, really, just totally inappropriate. And as you said, I asked them, what is this hateful tweet I posted? We're not allowed to tell you. Who is my accuser? We're not allowed to tell you, but they are the victim, not the accuser. Doesn't sound like justice, does it, Dan?
And Bernie, your experience was obviously so shockingly similar to Alison's.
Yeah.
Worse, though, because you ended up in a police cell for nearly 3 days.
Yeah, and I think that had Alison not seen what had happened to me and had the huge outpouring of disbelief and fury from a huge section of the media and, of course, an overwhelming part of the public, then when she went for her voluntary interview, I am pretty sure they would have taken all of her devices and she could have been charged. Now, the issue that the police had with her is that they're now saying it wasn't a non-crime hate incident. They're now saying she was being investigated for a criminal offence. And she's right. The threshold for this new law that the government brought in is quite high. The problem is no one knows what it consists of. What is it that you are allowed to say or make a mistake on, or are you not? And that's why this is so insidious and it's so bad. These non-crime hate incidents, of which there are thousands, are about people being offended. Well, just because you are offended doesn't mean you're right, okay? So feeding the birds, hanging washing out on the line, they've all been reported and the police have shuffled off to investigate them to see if they can charge anyone. It's outrageous. And she's shone a light in a really wonderful way. She's incredibly articulate. She's a fantastic journalist, but she's shone a light all over the world. The rest of the world are looking at the UK like, what the hell is going on?
Well, Elon Musk, Dr. Renee, has actually described the UK as a totalitarian police state.
Well, that is where we're getting to now, isn't it? And it does, he's right, it does need to stop. The issue with all of this is that Alison, fortunately, is, as you rightly say, one of our leading columnists in this country. And so she had so much power behind her that I think in the end they probably got too scared of Alison. But for lots of ordinary people living their lives, they're not scared. And we need immediately to understand as a society that any view is a view that somebody is actually able to hold, whether we like it or not. We need to scrap this whole non-crime, hate crime thing. It shouldn't even be a thing. If it's not a crime, it doesn't need police. End of story. You don't have the right to not be offended. And, you know, people say things to me, you know, every day that I might take offence at, but that's my problem. It's no one else's. It's my issue. It's my reaction. And it's about how you deal with that reaction. The problem we have is that we're not teaching our kids at school that they might have to deal with views that they find unsavoury and how to deal with them. We don't have debate in societies anymore. We have trigger warnings all over everything. We give people support in case they go to a lecture at university that they find a little bit too challenging. This is the antithesis of breeding a healthy society. And we are seeing that now in our mental health crisis. And Alison has, as Bernie says, shone a light on this.
Let's move on in our countdown now to number 7. For me, one of the most despicable parts of the complete hysteria and actually spreading of lies to damage Prince William and Catherine, the Princess of Wales, earlier this year was by members of the Sussex Squad. And the Sussex Squad are the folk who back Harry and Meghan in the most vile ways online. I had exposed them as the biggest gang of internet trolls in online history. But one man who seemed to get away with his lies and his falsehoods was Stephen Colbert. He is the hard left US chat show host, Trump hating, Harry and Meghan loving, who went on air when Catherine had received a cancer diagnosis and was undergoing treatment, she hadn't announced it publicly because she wanted her children to finish school before she did so. And he claimed that her disappearance from the public eye was in some way to do with a rumoured affair that William had had in the past. Now, the problem that I have with this, that it hasn't been looked into the links between Stephen Colbert and Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, because trust me, they are there. But before I talk about that, let's have a look at what Stephen Colbert actually said.
Here's something for those of you who are royal watchers, and I know you are Lewis. I am. I'm afraid I've got some troubling news about England's royal family. I know this is your life's passion, and I'm sorry. As we were talking about on this show yesterday, the kingdom has been all aflutter by the seeming disappearance of Kate Middleton. Well, now internet sleuths are guessing that Kate's absence may be related to her husband and the future king of England, William, having an affair. Oh, no! My heart goes out to poor Kate. Now let's ditch the hot goss. I am ready to spill the tea. Literally. Fabrizio, bring it out. There you go. Thank you very much. Thank you. You may go. Go. We're not going to share the stage with some of that handsome. So I think we all know who the alleged other woman is. Say it with me. The Marchioness of Mandalay. What a beautiful name that I'm being told right now that I pronounce incorrectly. It is in fact pronounced Chumley. Counterpoint. No, it's not. Learn English. England. Now, there have been rumors of an affair between William and the marching band of chicanery since 2019, according to tabloids. Back then, when Kate supposedly confronted him about it, he laughed it off, saying there was nothing to it. Always a good response when your wife accuses you of cheating. Ha ha ha. Imagine me having an affair.
Now, Dr. Renee, you know from a medical perspective that when you've just been diagnosed with cancer, especially as a young mum, it's earth-shattering. Now, to have to try and tackle that diagnosis with your personal life being dragged through the mud. I mean, do you remember, Renee, the Sussex Squad were even spreading theories that Catherine was dead, that she had been abused or locked up by Prince William, that she'd somehow fled the marriage. I mean, this was actually something that spread completely into the mainstream, as ridiculous as that seems looking just a few months forward. However, my contention is that Stephen Colbert would not have gone on air and said that without the express approval in some way of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. Remember, Prince Harry appeared on his show not all that long ago. They're in the same circles.
I mean, and that in itself is the issue here, isn't it? Because regardless of what's happened between these family members, you know, Harry and William and Meghan and Kate, you would hope that anybody has the compassion that when somebody gets a cancer diagnosis to actually pull up the drawbridge as a family, come together and say, okay, even if where they're not going to support them or not be allowed to support them because they've all been so burned by them, that we won't actually throw any more oil onto this fire, and we will now step back, be quiet, and let this poor family deal with what is, as you rightly say, a devastating diagnosis for anyone, especially a young mother with very young children. And, you know, I thought as soon as she made that beautiful video where she told the world what was going on, because she was forced to, let's face it, she didn't want to make that video.
No.
I thought then that everything would stop, that everybody would leave her alone, and they didn't. That's the poison here.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? But the thing is, Bernie, for Stephen Colbert to do something like that and then just for everyone to move on, not ask any questions about why he did that, what prompted that, I think just shows you it's another example of the mainstream media covering up for their pals.
Absolutely. And don't you just love free speech? I absolutely love free speech, because then you see people for who they are.
Good point.
And it means that you can look at that man and think, bad taste, wrong time, cruel, unnecessary. I'm not going to watch you anymore. And you're going to turn it off. And comedians, for example, have done that for decades, haven't they? There was, I can't remember what he's called. I turned him off as soon as he did it, making fun of Katie Price's son, who was terribly ill at the time.
Frankie Boyle.
Yeah, Frankie Boyle. You have the right to turn people off if you don't want to listen to them. And I agree with Renee. It was cruel and wrong. And the media and the establishment are never going to stop someone like that.
No, you've made such a critical point, actually. And I really do think this conversation should also show the left how we, wherever we're positioned on the political spectrum, whether people call it the right or, however people describe the conservative side of politics, none of us just now have called on Stephen Colbert to be cancelled, to lose his career, to be sacked. But trust me, if that had been a comedian on the right doing something equivalent, that is exactly what would have happened. And I think that is a critical difference here. I am absolutely saying what we should do is look at why Stephen Colbert did what he did. Was it prompted by Prince Harry and Meghan Markle? But no, we're not calling on him to be cancelled and expunged from society. And I think that does really show a critical difference between the two groups. Dr. Renee, though, would you say when you look at the year on the whole and you think about where Catherine and William have ended up, which is actually stronger than they were before? And I don't know if you've seen this sometimes, Renee, in your experience as a doctor, but it feels almost like the cancer has brought them together even more, and they are stronger as a family unit. They seem more in love than ever. And you contrast that to Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, who don't even want to be seen in public together now.
Yeah. I mean, look, there's nothing like a serious illness being diagnosed than for the entire family to refocus on what's actually important in life. And sometimes in the melee of everything, people lose sight of that. We've all done it, haven't we? And suddenly refocus on the people around you. And you realise that time can be very short sometimes with no warning at all. Therefore, you need to actually bring it all back home and concentrate on that. One also never knows what goes on within a relationship. And I always say this, no one ever knows. So speculating from the outside is completely pointless. It's up to them what goes on in their relationship. And I think they've demonstrated that together they've come through what has been a pretty tough time and always is for anyone. And they do, as you rightly say, look much stronger. And to me, they look like a happy couple with a loving family.
Yeah, but it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think Dr. Renee is so right there, Bernie. Catherine has totally changed as a result of that experience. I mean, you think about the video that she put out with her young family, for example, being very tactile with William. That's not something she would ever have considered doing before her cancer diagnosis. In fact, she did receive some criticism for it, actually, which I thought was completely unfair. But I think it's lovely for something positive to come out of this, which is she is prepared to show much more of who she really is with the public.
I'm sure that she feels incredibly insecure going back into the public eye. There were some incredibly unkind comments made about her looking old or not looking well. And it must make her feel, as I say, very insecure going back out into the public. And William is her rock, isn't he? He's clearly the person she turns to comfort her and give her confidence. And I like that she's being more tactile.
Do you, Dr. Renee?
Oh, I love it. It's real, isn't it? It's real people. 100%, and we should see more. And I always remember Diana and Charles. If you think about it, the public would have adored them to be tactile. It's what they wanted to see.
Yeah, I actually loved this video. I really, really did. I thought it was one of the highlights of the year. And I know some people thought it was maybe a little bit too glossy.
No,
but
I
disagree.
No, I loved it too. I loved it. I thought it was beautiful. Why not? Everything's so bad. Everything's so difficult. It was a beautiful video. It was really well put together. But of course, you see, you can't, for the activists and the shills, you can't say you loved it. You can't say it's beautiful because then you're a far-right nationalist. It's just crazy.
Yes, indeed.
Inciting love.
Inciting
love, Renee.
How terrible. But as I say, I am going to keep on looking into the Sussex squad because genuinely there is a huge hypocrisy here. I know we've spoken about it, Bernie, before, with the fact that Prince Harry is now connected to the Aspen Institute. The Aspen Institute is a completely globalist body which effectively wants to shut down free speech online. And all of these connections and all of his tentacles in terms of the media are something I'm going to keep looking into. And the fact that he is a part of the Aspen Institute, but he does not condemn the Sussex Squad, who are the biggest gang of internet trolls in online history, is totally hypocritical. But look, let's move on to one you're very passionate about, Bernie. At number 6, Labour turns on farmers but makes an enemy of Jeremy Clarkson, who gives an impassioned address at Westminster.
How many people here, if you'd raise your hands, are from a family farm? I want to see, right. I hope you can see that. I hope we've got our cameras from the show up high to see. That's a lot of hands. Now, keep them up, and I want you to lower them if you think, and you've had time to work this out, you think you're going to be unaffected by the changes to APR and BPR. Put your hands down if you're going to be unaffected. Thank you. My case rests. I want Newsnight to see that. She was trotting out. Nobody's affected. Rachel Reeves says so. Since when was the BBC the mouthpiece of this infernal government? I've got to get the brakes on. The trouble is I'm off my tits on codeine and paracetamol up here. I don't know what I'm saying. But I do want to finish, if I may, with a message to the government. I do. Not a shouty one, it's this. For the sake of everybody here, and for all the farmers who are stuck at home today, paralysed by a fog of despair over what's been foisted upon them, I beg of the government to be big, to accept that this was rushed through, it wasn't thought out, and it's a mistake.
But Bernie Spofforth, yes, inspiration there from Jeremy Clarkson, but 2024 was the year that this despicable Labour government declared war on small farms, right?
Yeah, I think there are many strands to this argument, and it is a very complex and much broader subject, actually, what's happening with farming and agriculture and produce all over the world. But with regard to what Labour has done, most of those people do not come outside of their Westminster bubble. They might spend a little bit of time in their constituency, but they're not on the ground with farmers. And if you look at Britain, and they call us the populists, right? We're not populists, we're the majority. We love our farming. It's part of our heritage and our background. And of course, all things old must go. In the new world, it's a new type of farming, right? So they don't really care about how farming works in the UK, as long as the corporations can consolidate and they can get their tax from that. And I'll give you a complete example as to why I know they are utterly clueless. They said that no farm under £3 million in value would pay tax. Well, if your farm is worth under £3 million in value, then you have no animals on it. All they've done is they've protected the posh London set with their pony paddock. That's what they've done, is in the areas where houses are quite expensive and people are well off, and they've got a little bit, they've got a couple of acres, or they've got 5 acres with a pony on, yippee, they won't have to pay tax.
Dr. Renee, how did you feel about Labour's declaration of war on the farmers?
So I am incensed for the farmers over this, and I think it shows a complete lack of understanding for most people, including actually James O'Brien's gone quite hard on this too. He doesn't understand it at all. What people don't understand is the difference between me selling my house and when I die and my children having to pay taxes. They don't live in my house. Farmers live in their farms. They live in the houses on them. So if they have to sell off bits of their farm, it actually affects their livelihood because they have to stay there and raise the money in a different way, not just the proceeds from selling the house. So that's the number one difference. But I actually think, as Bernie says, this is much bigger and deeper and people are not getting it. We've seen this week about the bovar and feeding cows stuff to stop them bottom burping. We're seeing the push now from the UN that people should cut their meat reduction by 50%. This is just all playing into the net zero without doing it overtly and saying to farmers, you can't have so many cows, you can't have so many acres of land because we need to cut meat production. So subliminally, people are being coerced into the route of getting rid of meat in their diets without it being said. And this farming tax is just another part of it.
Yeah, that's exactly true. And if you look in the UK, we have 209,000 farmsteads. Only 17% of land is owned by corporations and conglomerates, meaning the rest is owned by farmers and small-scale farmers. And bit by bit by bit by bit, they're being bought and consolidated because large operations can scale up their technology far faster and be more efficient at producing this new technologically created food. And that is a massive part of the pressures that farmers are going to face because they can't afford to increase the technology on their farms. They just are what they are.
And number 5, on the worst of 2024, the downfall of Hugh Edwards.
Breaking news here on the BBC. Within the past few minutes, former BBC News presenter Hugh Edwards has pleaded guilty at Westminster Magistrates Court to 3 counts of making indecent images of children. He arrived just under an hour ago. The offences took place between 2020 and 2022. They relate to 37 images that were shared on a WhatsApp chat, according to the Metropolitan Police. So in the past few minutes, the broadcaster, former BBC presenter Hugh Edwards, has pleaded guilty at Westminster Magistrates Court to 3 counts of making indecent images of children.
And Dr. Renee, I still think that people have not realised how astonishing a moment like that is. The BBC, the British Bashing Corporation, announcing on their air that the man who they allowed to reveal the death of the Queen, the late Queen Elizabeth II, to the world is a paedophile.
Yes. And nobody's actually even using that word, are they?
Nope.
These were images of children, and it doesn't matter if those children were 16 or 6, they're children and they're being abused by an older man. And this just comes back to, doesn't it, the constant defenseless children in our society that nobody appears to want to stand up for. We can attack the likes of Greg Wallace for saying some fruity jokes, but not defend our children against paedophiles like Hugh Edwards and the many, many others that walk free day after day in this country. When is someone going to actually call out Hugh Edwards and the likes of him, because there are many of them and many of them are in our industry, call them out for what they are and shun them?
Bernie?
I think that we're in a situation now where something that the majority of people consider absolutely abhorrent is almost being delivered as an acceptance of the abnormal. And I have a massive problem with that. And we're seeing that through our schools. We're seeing it through all the support Hugh Edwards was given at the time. Don't forget, most people were like, oh, well, it was only a 17-year-old. Oh, well, we don't think he meant it. even to sentencing guidelines, because sentencing guidelines were changed by Keir Starmer to say that paedophiles, people caught with images, shouldn't go to prison for their first offence. Well, I'm sorry, but every single child in those photographs was a victim of abuse. And if you view them, you should go to prison. That's it. But we're accepting it, aren't we? This abnormal behaviour. We're teaching about very young sexual experiences in our schools. And children now, how do they know what's normal and what's abnormal? How do they?
And Bernie, I think it is really just worth watching, given you mentioned it, some of the support that Hugh Edwards received from the media class, the elite class, who are so desperate to cancel people like Lawrence Fox and myself for laughing at the fact that the Fox said he didn't want to shag someone. And yet, look at what John Sopel had to say about Hugh Edwards.
We now know there was no illegality. So what are you left with? Someone's private life has come under scrutiny, who is now unwell. I think it would be a crying shame if this is the last we see of Hugh Edwards on television, when the allegations have turned out to be not that much. And I think all his friends will just be wishing him well at this stage, because Hugh commands huge respect in this industry.
There you go.
See, they do it for the great and the good, but they don't do it for the down and the out, right? So the guy who's the grocer that makes distasteful jokes that, you know, women like me would probably tell him to shut up, or I might go and say, he's a creep. And we probably wouldn't shut up about it. And I know lots of women have. But he is destroyed. Do they want him to kill himself for telling bad jokes and being a bit of a lech? Is that what they want him to do? Because they haven't done it with people like Jimmy Savile. They didn't do it with Hugh Edwards, did they? They just all supported him and then shut up. No one meant it again.
But Greg Wallace, remember, doesn't fit there who they support.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And they didn't do it. These lefty lovers were not outraged by the Rochdale grooming gangs.
Greg Wallace has had more coverage than the grooming gangs scandal ever did on the mainstream media. Let that sink in. Wow, I'm getting wound up now, because at number 4, another one that the mainstream media just decided they were not going to go there with, Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, exposed for having a fake life. But let's just not talk about it, right?
Yeah.
Let's look at the CV. It's very, very clear. She states on her LinkedIn that she was working as an economist at HBOS. But Guido reports this is not true. Guido can reveal that Reeves worked in a mundane support department of the bank, according to multiple former colleagues. Within the Halifax HBOS complaints team, there was a small support unit which managed administration processes, IT matters, and small projects and planning. It was a team of 3 people, far from the economics department. Can you believe this? And it gets worse, folks. It gets worse, because Guido says Reeves has a tendency to be selective about the truth when it comes to her CV. Her chess champion myth is also a falsehood. Now, Guido reached out to the Reeves team. They did not deny she did not work as an economist for the bank, but instead said she covered various areas using her economist background.
Now, Bernie, again, this shows the complete corrupt nature of the elite class, the establishment, the mainstream media, because if this had been a Conservative Chancellor, trust me, they would not still be in their job, because the story would have led the mainstream media news every single day for weeks, just like Boris Johnson and Partygate. But when it's Rachel Reeves, oh, don't worry about the fact that she's basically made up a whole life, because there was a whole load more, Bernie, about her behaviour at HBOS, which we won't go into now. But this one infuriates me.
Yeah, it's outrageous. She should have lost her job. And it's so hypocritical of the media and Labour. So Labour were the ones that jumped all over reform in the last election for not having vetted their candidates well enough. Well, let me tell you now, big organizations vet their candidates to the point where they get credit score agencies like Experian to troll through CVs and find the lies. So that means either Labour knew that she'd lied, or they didn't even bother doing their own checks. And for me, to have a Chancellor of the Exchequer who is a liar, who says she is an economist and is not, is utterly unacceptable to me. I will never view this woman as capable of doing her job. And as she's just shown from the budget, she clearly isn't.
No, very, very true. But I mean, Dr. Renee, Slippery Starmer appointed a literal fraudster to the cabinet in Louise Haigh, the former Transport Secretary, who only lost her job once that story was revealed. So he doesn't seem to have any problems with surrounding himself by fraudulent women.
Well, he doesn't have a problem with that, but he also, this is the double standards, isn't it? So, people probably would give him a little bit of slack if he hadn't stood on the steps of Downing Street and said, we will serve you, the government of service, no more sleaze. And actually, all we've had from day one is sleaze story after sleaze story. And then we've got a Chancellor who is destroying the lives of small businesses, our farmers and the economy. There's no growth anymore on the basis that she is an economist from a lie on a CV. I mean, you couldn't make this up, and you would give him some slack if he wasn't so pious. And this is the typical look over here, please, don't look at us.
Very much, very much. Now, look, stand by, Bernie Spofforth, Dr. Renee, because the top 3 worst of 2024 just around the corner. Who is going to top the list? But first, if you want to look sharp for all of these New Year gatherings, check out the latest masterpiece from Manscaped, the Chairman Pro Electric Foil Shaver. Trust me, this is an incredible product guiding you to smooth, irritation-free shaving. So let me dive into the goods. Now, the Chairman Pro is armed with not one but 2 interchangeable skin-safe blade heads. Think of them as your grooming superheroes. The skin-safe 4-blade foil for when you want that baby's bottom smooth, and the skin-safe stubble trimmer for when you want to keep some stubble but clean it up a bit. Both keep you looking sharp while minimising razor burn and irritation, because no one wants to show up to a New Year's party, right? Looking like you're unshaven. But wait, there's more. The Chairman Pro has Flex Just technology, which is basically like the holiday miracle of slaving. The blades and pivoting head adjust to every curve of your face and is gentle on the neck area too. So go ahead, kiss that awkward jawline patch goodbye. And if you want even more precision, on the right side of the bracket, there's a precision lock. So when you lock it, the blade head sits firm so you can achieve a more precise shave. I use it myself and I find it very, very handy. Here's something, by the way, that will make your grooming easier too. The Chairman Pro completely waterproof, so you can use it in the shower. And the waterproof feature doesn't just make shaving easier, it also simplifies cleanup too. Just a quick rinse under the sink and you're all set. The Chairman Pro isn't just for daily shaves either. It's powerful enough to tackle up to 5-day growth, making it perfect whether you're shaving every day or just tidying up after a few days. And with up to 75 minutes of runtime on a single charge, you'll have plenty of juice to go. It even has a travel lock to help make sure it doesn't accidentally turn on your bag, and an LED spotlight. I find this really helpful actually, because it means that you can see every detail. Get the Chairman Pro today and experience a shave that is as smooth as you deserve. It has everything you need to keep your face looking and feeling its best, all in one box. So head on over to www.manscaped.com and join the over 11 million men worldwide. I'm one of them who trust Manscaped. Just use the code OUTSPOKEN when you check out. It's incredible. You get free shipping and a mega 20% discount. So that's manscaped.com using the coupon code OUTSPOKEN. But now, back to the show. And we're into the top 3 worst moments of 2024. There has been so much to choose from, especially in UK politics this year. At number 3, Labour's winter fuel allowance betrayal.
Are you targeting the elderly to save money?
We have found a £22 billion black hole in the economy, and we've got to fix it. What we're not going to do is pretend it isn't there or paper over it. That's what the last government did, and it made it worse. That means we've got to make tough choices. I don't want to cut the winter fuel allowance. I don't think anybody government wants to do that, but we've got to fix the foundations of our economy. And that's what this is all about, making sure that we fix the foundations, and then having done that, that we can build a better future that pensioners and so many other people voted for in this election. So this is a tough decision. Not a decision I want to make, but I'm absolutely determined we'll stabilise the economy and fix the foundations. And then on that, we will build the better Britain that we were elected into government with a strong mandate to bring about.
Dr. Renee, he's a liar because he completely lied about everything. He has no mandate because, I'm sorry, if you go to the electorate based on lie after lie after lie, then you can't talk about a mandate. If Keir Starmer had given an interview like that before the election, I might have some respect for him making these so-called hard decisions, but he didn't. He didn't just lie to us. I feel like he lied to us and is now spitting in our collective faces metaphorically because the lies were so egregious.
Right, so their lies were so egregious. There is no £22 billion black hole to start with, and they still to this day are going with it. And yet their own OBR, who they venerate, say that there isn't one. At most, there was £9 billion of financial pressure.
Yeah, and by the way, they created £9 billion with their ludicrous pay rises to the train drivers. So,
Exactly. And what they've decided to do, these are all decisions, these are choices, these are not things they had to do. So they've decided that pensioners can die in winter, and pensioners will die as a result of this. I see them in my surgery every day trying to work out how they're going to keep warm tomorrow. That's number one. So they're willing for pensioners to die. They're willing to sacrifice farmers. They're willing to sacrifice small businesses and make people unemployed and businesses go under. But at the same time, they're willing to give 11 billion quid to Africa for climate change, 500 million to Brazil for their farmers. They don't care. They want to be part of this global cabal and be damned with the old people who don't vote for them. It is disgusting, it is evil, and it is cruel.
Very well put. Bernie?
I think she just said it all. Like, literally every word I was going to say. But I would also say that the policies they have brought in have made Britain have the most expensive energy of anywhere in the developed world, with prices only going up. So how are they going to deal with pensioners next year? Because the greatest cause of death isn't heat, it's cold. Exactly as Renee says. Now, it's £300. I understand that is a large amount when it's all added up. And what they've said is, if struggling pensioners claim for their pension credit, if they all did that, then they'd all get their £300. But what Labour are not telling you is that if the people did all claim through their pension, it would be higher than the amount they've just lost in taking 300 quid off the pensioners. And my worry is not so much about this winter, because, family members do have a little bit of money, perhaps extra this year, to give to pensioners. But 2 years down the road, we're going to have an almighty problem. Oil prices are up. We're not bringing in as much gas. Our energy prices are going up. How are these people going to pay? And how are these pensioners going to buy heat pumps?
But what
are we going to do about it?
I actually don't think they care, Bernie. I think they see pensioners as a burden on society because they need to pay their pensions. So actually, if they do lose the 4,000 pensioners that their very own report predicted would die if the Conservatives took away the winter fuel allowance, that's actually quite cost effective for Labour. I think that's how they see it.
Well, it might bring down some of the waiting lists at the NHS, I guess. If we're not treating elderly people, then there's a bed free, hey?
Yeah.
No, indeed. Very, very good points. But look, let's move on to number 2 now. And a similar theme. Starmer. But this one is actually more about the mainstream media, who seem to make a decision this year to cover up something that they are all talking about in regards to Starmer's private life. I have described it as Starmer's big secret. And we were one of the only media organizations, obviously we're in the independent media, to dig down into what's really going on in this story, including with Guido Fawkes. And here is the moment where Paul Staines, the editor, or he was the editor, the founder of Guido Fawkes now, went as far as he legally could to bring Outspoken viewers the truth about the MSM cover-up of the truth of Starmer's family.
Do you know anything more? Or are you under pressure legally not to reveal more?
Well, you know, we've both been in the game a long time. You know the rules. If you can't stand it up completely, you can't run the story. So we have a name, as do the Mail and the Telegraph. We have a birth certificate. And people have been looking into it. People have been journalists have contacted the family. So it's in play, and a lot of people do know it, but we have not been able to substantiate it to the degree that you need to publish.
Okay, so but that does show you, Bernie, that it is possible to at least be transparent with your audience about what you know and why you can't report it.
Yeah, the media are never going to try and bring Keir Starmer down. They did everything they could to get him there in the first place, right? And as Guido's just said, if you can't stand it up, you don't report it. But that's not what they do to ordinary people, is it? Because they couldn't stand up what they reported on me and did it anyway.
Yeah.
Likewise me.
And with you, they did it anyway. They printed rumours because...
Yes. And this guy is the Prime Minister of the country.
I know, but they won't do it because he's got, I don't know, his super injunction or whatever it is. I don't know. I don't understand
well, no,
how
the thing is, he doesn't have a super injunction. And this is why, Dr. Renee, I find the mainstream media on this story so pathetic and so toothless, because if there was a super injunction, at least that would be a reason. Fundamentally, they don't have the balls to go there about Starmer's private life because they feel that he has tried to an extent, keep it private. But I mean, we saw him go very public with his wife at the Taylor Swift concert after she had disappeared from the campaign for a very long time.
Yeah. I mean, look, this is, as Bernie says, just one rule for them and one for us, isn't it? And we're quite happy to drag people through the dirt on a daily basis who the media feel brave enough that they're not going to face massive lawsuits or be dragged through the courts. So let's just do this and destroy somebody's life. But with Starmer, they're just a bit too scared. And again, it's this authoritarian society, because that's what he's achieved. He's actually achieved, you know, the fear that he tried to instill in people in the summer when he put people like Bernie in police cells and other people in prison. And that's exactly what's going on here. It's this authoritarian, you will do as I say and not as I do.
Absolutely. But for me, this is all about mainstream media hypocrisy too. I agree with all of that, but I'm sorry, you cannot spend 4 years obsessing over every detail of Boris Johnson's personal life to the extent where you literally want to drive a democratically elected prime minister out of office. I mean, do you remember when every single newspaper on the front page splashed on the fact that Boris and Carrie had an argument at his flat? It was breaking news. So there is completely not just two-tier justice in this country, there is two-tier media coverage. And that is why there has to be an independent media revolution in this country, because there at least has to be a level playing field. That's all I'm asking for. You can't say that... Yeah, from the media, because you can't say that Boris Johnson's personal life, every single cough and spit really matters, but Keir Starmer gets different treatment. You just can't do that. But they have. Although...
But they're doing it. But I think they're doing it for a different reason. I think they're doing it because independent media And the right to free speech is becoming a very, very, very big problem for authoritarian.
Oh, yes.
Okay? So if the media stay on side and they back him up, then they won't come under the same pressure that people like you and other independent media outlets have. This is all about them. It's not about doing the right thing. It's about them staying in favor of an authoritarian government.
Yeah, indeed. Indeed. Although we see what happens, though, when the mainstream media spend months and years lying to their audience, they switch off. CNN, MSNBC have lost half their audience after the US election because eventually their viewers realized, holy crap, we've been lied to by these guys. We've been operating in this echo chamber and we've got to get outside of it. So I actually have a lot of hope that the way the mainstream media are acting over Starmer will end up, Bernie. They might think it protects them at the moment, but I think in the end it will speed up their decline. But look, the moment has come. And this actually isn't a moment to celebrate. The worst of 2024, the despicable cover-up over the Southport massacre. I discussed the situation with David Starkey. Now, the Sunday Times, and this was very obvious to us, can disclose that the Crown Prosecution Service first sought permission from the Attorney General's office to charge Axel Ruder-Cabana with possession of a biological weapon on October the 15th, 14 days before the charge was eventually announced. While the CPS normally makes decisions to charge suspects independently, there are a small number of serious offences that require consent from the government's two law officers, the Attorney General, Keir Starmer's best mate, and the Solicitor General. Sources have suggested to the Sunday Times that the delay was at least partially linked to significant concerns among ministers, the CPS and police that the announcement could spark public disorder. But David Starkey, firstly, such a pleasure to have you on Outspoken. Secondly...
Morning, Dan, yes.
Great to have you. Secondly, this to me now feels like an absolutely despicable establishment cover-up. I mean, there's no way that Yvette Cooper and Keir Starmer did not know within days that ricin was found at the home of Axel Ruder-Cabana, that he had downloaded an Al-Qaeda terror manual. However, we were not told a thing. And then the actual announcement delayed because of not just Chris Cabba, but also this Tommy Robinson protest. We do recommend that people go back. I've packaged up the David Starkey interview and one of our highlights of 2024, because he explains, Bernie, how this was a cover-up that absolutely is out in the open. It's how the establishment now works in Britain.
Yeah, and I think it's heartbreaking. And I think for me personally, and for all those other people that were charged, that ended up in prison, their lives destroyed, that little girl who'll never get a job working in the care industry again, they were just collateral damage. And it is unforgivable. I will never recover from what they did. I asked a question. I said, if this is true, and by the time they arrested me, they knew.
Oh, they knew. They absolutely knew. I mean, Dr. Renee, look, there's a lot on this cover-up which is still not public. I find that disgusting. It's because of the UK's contempt of court laws. But as Bernie points out, they don't give a damn when they're trying to send a message about people who are posting on social media or potentially turning up to a protest. The Home Office was actually happy to put the faces of people out as if they were already guilty of a crime before they had gone through any process. Yet in this case, lots of information about Axel Ruder-Cabana was covered up for such a long time. I still can't say everything that I know. I hate that. But it is the law that we operate under in the UK. But what we can say, as Bernie is very clear on, is that the Home Secretary Yvette Cooper and Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, when they were trying to demonise people like Bernie, would absolutely have known that there was an Al-Qaeda training manual found within his house and that he was producing ricin.
Yeah. I mean, look, this all comes back to the same theme that we've talked about so often in today's show, doesn't it? And it's about living in an authoritarian state and our thoughts and our speech being controlled. And that's exactly what went on here. And what I fear, Dan, is as we go forward into this year and this court case comes to light, because now they've been able to wrap it up in terrorism legislation, they may well be able to suppress the information forever. We may actually never find out the truth about this young man because they don't want us to, and because they don't want us to, because they don't want us to think about it and join the dots of what's going on as boatloads of people like this young man arrive every day or come legally as this family did. It might create unease amongst people who are worried about their communities. So I fear that this isn't going to change. This isn't going to get better. This is the state that they want us to live in, and they actually want it to be more controlled than it currently is.
Indeed. Well, what a year it has been. Dr. Renee, Bernie of If This Is True, a must subscribe YouTube channel. Thank you so much for being part of the Outspoken family this year. A lot, unfortunately, to commiserate on in 2024, but let's hope for a better year, eh?
Oh, I hope. Together.
Yeah, we'll get through. We will get through. Thank you both so much.
Thanks,
Dan.
Now, the best way to support Outspoken is by subscribing to a monthly paid membership for access to the Uncancelled aftershow. That returns Monday to Friday in just a couple of weeks. You'll also get my exclusive reporting and columns, access to our live chats on the Substack app, and the chance to join a thriving community. Most importantly, it is a safe space. Your support from just £5 a month gives you that 30 minutes of extra content on weekdays, but allows me to continue making this independent daily news show. I hope you will have seen over the course of the 50 countdown this week that I am prepared to cover stories that either the mainstream media ignore or completely twist on a daily basis. And I would love you to be part of it. It's actually so important that you're part of it. Completely understand, by the way, if you want to go for the free subscription, you can join up completely for free. I just want you to be part of this community. www.outspoken.live is the address. Outspoken returns on Monday, 5 p.m. UK time, midday Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Make sure you hit the subscribe button on YouTube and Rumble if you're watching there. Most importantly, I promise to keep fighting for you. Have a great weekend.